Chapter 1. In a dark room, the young man was lying lazily on the bed, mumbling to himself, I didn't expect the owner of this body to be called Yi-chan as well. He looks like me, could it be that this body was prepared for me? In his previous life, Yi-chan was a physics student in a university in the 21st century. He was quite smart and observant. But because of an accident in the lab, all the machines exploded and his soul was sent to this world. If it was a normal person who was suddenly sent to a strange environment, and their soul entered a strange body, they would definitely go crazy. But Yi-chan did not feel anything, he was just a little surprised. Thinking about this, Yi-chan started to wonder if he was a psycho. If he did not feel anything when something this big happened, then what else could he feel? In this short period of memory fusion, Yi-chan had already digested all the memories of this body. In the memory, he was a disciple of a big family. He entered the Sky Cloud Martial School at the age of 12, and became an outer disciple at the age of 14. The only thing that was criticized was that in the 2 years between the ages of 12 and 14, besides training his chi to the mortal realm stage 4, the body's owner did not make any progress in other areas. He had only trained the basic cloud sword art to the 3rd movement. Looks like if I want to survive in this world, I have to get rid of the stupid title. Yi-chan was not happy that the body's owner was called stupid. After all, they were now one, and he who was not stupid did not want to be called stupid. After making up his mind, Yi-chan rolled his eyes. He could not help but remember the things that happened before he was 12 years old. The Sky Cloud Martial School was located in the north of the Windy Nation. Together with the other 4 martial schools in the country, they were known as One Valley, One Village, 3 Schools. Other than the 5 most powerful forces, the 8 big families controlled the Windy Nation's martial arts world. Even the royal court tried their best not to mess with them. And Yi-chan's family was one of the 8 big families, the Yi family. The Yi family developed more than 200 years ago. Their main business was tea and silk, and they had accumulated a huge amount of wealth. As the saying goes, no matter how much wealth you have, you still need to have enough strength to protect it. Otherwise, it would just be an unguarded piece of fat meat that everyone wanted to take a bite out of. After experiencing countless setbacks and extortion, the head of the Yi family at that time pondered over the painful experience and decided to use his strong financial resources to develop the family into a martial arts family to compete with other forces. That was how the Yi family, one of the 8 great families of today, came into being. As a descendant of the Yi clan, everyone had their eyes on the top of their heads when they went out. Others couldn't wait to curry favor with them, but Yi-chan wasn't one of them. The reason was that his cultivation talent was too terrible, which was extremely disappointing. Fortunately, her father was the current leader of the Yi family, and her mother was an outer elder of the Rudra Martial School, one of the top 3 martial schools, so no one dared to mock or disrespect them openly. Even so, Yi-chan was still bullied quite a bit. What he remembered the most was that his eldest uncle's son, his second son, and his third uncle's son would pick on him from time to time. They would even humiliate him in a secluded place. Even his maid, Chrysanthemum, was often looked down upon by the other maids. Every time she would come to him and cry, complaining about her grievances. Fuck, I have to get my revenge. Yi-chan's eyes were filled with hatred, and he clenched his fists tightly. It was not unreasonable for him to be so angry. Right now, he was a combination of 2 Yi-chans. He had both the memories and emotions of his previous life, and the memories and emotions of his current life. In other words, both Yi-chans were him, and there was no difference between them. No matter which one of Yi-chans was humiliated, he would be furious. Trying his best to control his emotions, Yi-chan continued to recall. The Yi family's disciples started training their chi from the age of 10. Only those who reached Mortal Realm Stage 2 before the age of 12 would be chosen by the top 5 martial institutions of the Windy Nation to become their disciples. However, to become an outer disciple, one had to at least reach Mortal Realm Stage 4. Maybe it was because of the pressure, or maybe it was because he didn't want to embarrass his parents, but Yi-chan managed to reach Mortal Realm Stage 2 within 2 years, and then he reached Mortal Realm Stage 4. He barely crossed the threshold and became an outer disciple of the Sky Cloud Martial School. However, compared to the other disciples of the Yi family, he was still far behind. His eldest uncle's son, Yifeng, and his third uncle's son, Yiming, both reached Mortal Realm Stage 4 at the age of 12. The most powerful ones were his second uncle's son, Yi Tang, and his fourth uncle's daughter, Yi Xian. Both of them reached Mortal Realm Stage 5 at the age of 12. They were definitely the rare geniuses of the Yi family. According to the difference in talent, the martial institutions they entered were naturally different. Yi Chen's talent was the worst, so he entered the rank 9 Sky Cloud Martial School. Yi Feng and Yi Ming entered the rank 8 Purple Sun Martial School. Yi Tang entered the rank 7 North Snow Martial Academy. Yi Xian, who was as famous as him, also entered the rank 7 Emerald Martial School. There is only 1 year left until the Yi family's triennial family meeting. I can't lose face. Getting off the bed, Yi Chan washed up and went to the yard with his sword. The sword cloud art had 9 movements in total. The first 6 did not have names, and the last 3 were named gap-seeking, flowing clouds and water, and luminous movement. Closing his eyes, the sword cloud art's heart diagram appeared in his mind. Yi Chan stretched out his great steel sword and started to train from the first movement. Different from the past, when Yi Chan swung his sword, he did not feel any obstruction at all. It was like a river flowing when the channel is formed. Crack! A flying leaf was cut in half, but Yi Chan did not feel anything and continued to swing. The first movement, the second movement, the third movement, the seventh movement. Gradually, Yi Chen's sword attacks were freed from the restraints. Not only was his sword dancing speed extremely fast, but his movements were also light and agile. He was able to move freely without any restraints. Soon he reached the 7th movement, finding the gap. All of a sudden, the sword light was like an agile mudfish, easily passing through a few different fallen leaves. Putting away his sword, Yi Chan was also a little surprised. For beginners, even the most basic martial arts were hard to learn. This was not only because of talent, but also because of the adaptability of new things. It was just like learning to swim. At the beginning, because of the fear of water, it was very difficult to learn. But once you got used to it, you would be able to do more difficult movements and even create your own movements. All in all, it was not hard to go from low to high, but it was hard to go from nothing to something. Taking a deep breath, Yi Chan emptied his mind and started to perform the sword cloud art. The first movement, the 7th movement. The first movement, the 7th movement. After performing the sword cloud art more than 10 times, Yi Chan finally understood the 8th movement, flowing clouds and water. Under the morning sun, the great steel sword reflected the white sword light. It was like the clouds in the sky, or the water in the stream endless. Correspondingly, the qi inside his body was also like the water. It slowly sped up, completing one small cycle after another, and finally returned to his dantian, and then flowed out again, repeating the cycle. Whoosh! His dantian slightly swelled, and Yi Chan woke up with a start. Middle Mortal Realm Stage 4? That's so easy. Yi Chan knew himself well. He knew that it would take at least a week to get from early Mortal Realm Stage 4 to Middle Mortal Realm Stage 4, but he did it in just an hour. There must be something wrong with this abnormal situation. Yi Chan understood that there must be a reason for this change. Chapter 2. But no matter how he thought about it, Yi Chan could not think of any changes in his body. So the only explanation was because of the soul fusion, which gave him an extraordinary comprehension ability that allowed him to easily reach the 8th movement of the flying cloud arts. As for how inner chi improved, it was very simple. As everyone knew, the mental cultivation method of inner strength was tranquil skill, while the martial arts technique was dynamic skill. Although the two had different forms, they both had the effect of training inner chi. However, in comparison, the mental cultivation method of inner strength was completely used to train inner chi, while the martial arts technique was mainly used to attack the target, and the training of inner chi was secondary. After understanding the whole story, Yi Chan could not help but feel his heart beating faster. There were 2 most important talents for a warrior. One was to be gifted and have a great body, and the other was to have a great comprehension ability that allowed them to learn things quickly. The former had a much higher level of chi training than normal people like Yi Tang and Yi Xian, while the latter could easily master the martial art and beat the stronger ones. If you really wanted to compare, it all depended on the warrior himself. God is on my side. If I keep this speed, reaching the Mortal Realm Stage 8 in 1 year will not be a dream anymore. The path of cultivation was extremely difficult. Talented people might be able to reach the 5th stage in 2 years, but in the following 2 years they might not be able to reach the 8th stage. The time needed to reach the 9th stage and the 10th stage would double, and it was even more difficult to reach the condensing reality realm from the mortal realm. In the history of the Yi family, only the 3rd leader of the family had reached the condensing reality realm at the age of 15. Knowing that he would not need much time to master the 9th movement of the flying cloud arts, Yichun decided to go to the martial art pavilion to get some more suitable martial arts. After lunch, Yichun hurried to the martial art pavilion. The martial art pavilion was usually a commonplace. The real martial arts would never be kept here. Plus, as an outer disciple, Yichun could only see the martial arts below the mid-rank mortal realm. Looking up all kinds of martial arts almost made Yichun dizzy. Flying sky sword art, wind sword art, crossing sword art, lone peak of 13 swords, cloud-breaking palm, limitless hand, air-breaking fist, King Kong fist, 7-star mantis fist. There were 30 to 40 sword techniques alone, more than 50 palm and fist techniques each, 28 leg techniques, and only 8 finger techniques. The flying sky sword art had a very high requirement for Qing Gong. Every movement must be light and elegant. The clear breeze sword art was a bit more complicated and required a certain level of comprehension. The crisscrossing sword art was full of killing intent. It was brutal and overbearing. It was suitable for those cold-blooded disciples to train. The lone peak of 13 swords was even more powerful than the previous dozens of sword arts. Alright, I'll choose the lone peak of 13 swords then. After thinking about it for a while, Yichun finally decided to train the lone peak of 13 swords. After all, his comprehension ability was extraordinary. Training normal sword arts would not be very meaningful, and would be a waste of time. So it was either he didn't choose or he chose the best one. As for fist, palm and finger techniques, Yichun had his own requirements. He liked fist techniques, so he chose the Vajra fist. Finger techniques were more complicated and difficult to practice, and he was afraid that it would delay the cultivation of sword techniques, so he temporarily gave up on it and ignored palm techniques. Holding the 2 manuals, Yichun went to the pavilion elder to register. The lone peak of 13 swords? The pavilion elder frowned and said, I know everyone wants to learn better martial arts, but don't be too ambitious. You have to take it step by step. This lone peak of 13 swords looks like a mid-rank mortal realm manual, but it is as hard as a high-rank mortal realm manual. A lot of outer disciples don't listen to my advice and end up with nothing, wasting a lot of time. Yichun knew that the elder meant well, so he said, Master, I know that the lone peak of 13 swords is hard to learn, but I have confidence. The pavilion elder shook his head. The outer disciples used to be full of confidence as well, but what good would that do? Never mind, I don't have the right to stop him from choosing. I just hope that he knows how difficult it is and doesn't waste his time. Thinking about this, the pavilion elder said, You know the rules of the Sky Cloud Martial School. Without the permission of the school, you are not allowed to teach martial arts without permission. Otherwise, you will lose your martial arts and in serious cases you will be beheaded. Also, you have to return the manual copy within 3 months. Don't worry, Master. I will not joke around with my life. Putting away the manuals, Yichun walked out of the pavilion of martial arts. The outer disciples of the Sky Cloud Martial School were free to do whatever they wanted, except for the morning and evening meetings, and the martial arts classes that were held once every 3 days. The next morning, Yichun took his great steel sword and walked deep into the mountains. The windy mountain was 3,800 meters high, and the top half of the mountain was covered in clouds all year round. It seemed to be isolated from the rest of the world. Other than some of the forbidden areas for the elders and core disciples to train, most of the open space in the forest could be used to train their own martial arts. After spending more than an hour, Yichun found a remote cliff. The cliff was about 10 meters wide, and 3 sides of it were covered in white fog. Sometimes it would turn into thousands of horses, sometimes it would turn into waves, and sometimes it would shrink and expand, changing constantly. Although a famous mountain in the 21st century is not bad, it is still lacking a little bit of magic. Only here can people forget everything else and focus on training their martial arts. Yichun sighed inwardly. In his opinion, it was not that easy to become a powerful warrior. One would have to be able to endure the loneliness. Those people who claimed that they would be able to become powerful, as long as they were given a great martial art, were completely daydreaming. Taking a deep breath, Yichun began his boring and monotonous training. He circulated his qi, stepped, swung his sword, shook his hand in only one day. Yi-chan could perform the 9th movement of the traveling cloud sword art, night light movement. Once the sword was performed, the dark sword light was dazzling and difficult to adapt to. In terms of power, it had basically reached the level of a middle-rank mortal realm martial artist. It was definitely Yi-chan's most powerful attack at the moment. He came in the morning and went back at night. Before he knew it, another 3 days had passed. On top of the steep cliff, a man pointed his sword at the huge rock in front of him. The sword light was like the reflection of the moon in the water. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The boulder was like a piece of tofu. Sword marks were left on it, and each mark was an inch deep. Finally completed. The exhaustion of his qi made Yi-chan sweat profusely, but he did not care at all. He looked at the sword marks on the huge rock with satisfaction, and a light smile appeared on his face. The 9th movement of the sky cloud sword art was several times more difficult than the previous 8 movements, but its power was also several times greater. Took Yi-chan 4 days to complete it. Apart from that, these 4 days of hard training had made the qi inside Yi-chan's body even purer, making it easier for him to control it. The next day, Yi-chan came to the cliff to train as usual. But unlike before, Yi-chan was going to start training the extremely difficult Lone Peak of 13 Swords. The Lone Peak of 13 Swords had a total of 13 movements. The sword power was extremely dangerous, like a lonely mountain that was isolated from the rest of the world. It made people feel a chill down their spine, as if all of their hidden flaws were being seen through. Following the movements on the manual, Yi-chan had a rough idea of what it was like. He could vaguely feel that indescribable state of mind. Yi-chan believed that as long as he could complete the Lone Peak of 13 Swords, he would be able to kill people who were weaker than him in a second. But when facing people who were more powerful than him, he would still be able to find flaws, unless his opponent was extremely experienced and had gradually grasped the essence of returning to nature. Chapter 3. 3 months passed by quickly. Outside the cliff, the sea of clouds was still tumbling. On top of the cliff, the young man was wearing a uniform, holding a great steel sword. Maybe it was an illusion, or maybe it was because of the environment, but the young man's sword aura gave off the feeling that he was at the top of the world. He was obviously standing in front of you, but it felt like he was standing on a lonely mountain far away. That kind of distance made people want to vomit blood. After 12 consecutive sword strikes, the young man's eyes were like lightning, piercing through the void. His figure suddenly leaped up, as if he was pouncing down from the peak of a mountain. With a flash of sword light, a terrifying sword mark of 3 inches deep and 3 feet long was left on the opposite boulder. It was clean, efficient, and merciless. Putting the sword back into the scabbard, the young man mumbled to himself, "No wonder the pavilion master wanted me to choose another sword art. This Lone Peak of 13 Swords is not just a simple mid-rank mortal realm martial skill. It contains such a profound artistic conception that it is way beyond the original scope." The young man was Yi-chan. In the past 3 months, he had completed the training of the Lone Peak of 13 Swords with his super comprehension ability. But recently, he realized that the Lone Peak of 13 Swords was not as simple as it seemed. It seemed like it was still missing something. In other words, the Lone Peak of 13 Swords was just an incomplete manual. The real manual had probably been lost, which was why it had dropped to mid-rank mortal realm. Fortunately, the person who was training it was Yi-chan. After a lot of hard work, he not only learned the artistic conception that the Lone Peak of 13 Swords did not originally have, but also improved his qi circulation. He believed that he would be able to train his own Lone Peak of 13 Swords in no time. Also, because of the 3 months of training, Yi-chan's qi had reached the early mortal realm stage 6. His progress was really fast. It's time to return the manual. Thinking of the Sky Cloud Martial School's rules, Yi-chan did not dare to delay. On the way back, Yi-chan's ears twitched. He heard a feminine voice coming from afar. It was at least a mile away, but it was still very clear. It was as if the entire voice had been condensed together and exploded in an instant. Such powerful qi. How strong must one's body be to be able to release it? Sounds like a girl. Unable to contain his curiosity, Yi-chan carefully approached. After crossing a few thorny meadows, Yi-chan arrived behind a boulder. Poking his head out, he saw a small forest. Beside the small forest was a wooden hut, and in front of the wooden hut was a small pond. A few lotus leaves floated on the surface of the pond, giving off an artistic feeling. At the edge of the small forest, a young girl of about 16 years of age, dressed in snow-white attire, was practicing her fist technique while letting out a soul-stirring shout. Her figure was thin and frail, but each of her punches and kicks were domineering and had a sharp penetrative power. It's senior sister Su Jing. Is this a forbidden area? Seeing the other party, Yichen finally understood. In the Sky Cloud Martial School, except for the leader and the inner elders who had their own mountains, the rest of the people who wanted to practice martial arts had to find a suitable place. However, although the Windy Mountain was big, the best places to practice martial arts were also limited. Normally, the outer elders and core disciples would take the initiative to occupy a good place and make it a forbidden place. If a normal person tried to break in, they would be scolded, and if it was light, they would be scolded, and if it was heavy, they would be severely punished. In Yichen's eyes, senior sister Su was one of the core disciples of the Sky Cloud Martial School, ranked 23rd. She was at the mid-condensing reality realm and was extremely talented. Su Jing was using her footwork. Between her punches and kicks, she pressed her tongue against her teeth and channeled her qi into her abdomen. She kept yelling to increase the power of her fist technique. After throwing out a few punches, Su Jing's qi had reached its peak. She jumped into the air and attacked like lightning, like a tiger pouncing on its prey. Her fist landed on a huge tree that was as thick as a bucket. Bang! Bang! An astonishing scene occurred. Dazzling golden light burst forth from Su Jing's fist and palm, which then converged into a solid substance. She easily broke 3 trees that were connected in a row. Her momentum was terrifying. It was Zhanqi release. Yichen squinted his eyes. When a mortal realm warrior transforms his qi into Zhanqi, it means that he has officially stepped into the condensing reality realm. Not only would a condensing reality realm warrior's combat power increase, their Zhanqi would also be able to leave their body and attack people from a distance. Come out. Su Jing had already noticed Yichen's arrival. She stared at Yichen's position with sharp eyes. Yichen swallowed his saliva and obediently showed himself. You are an outer disciple. Yes. Why are you peeking at me? Your voice traveled too far. I was curious, so I came to have a look. Su Jing looked at Yichen carefully. His attitude was neither servile nor overbearing, which made her a little curious. If it were any other outer disciple, they would usually stammer in front of her, but Yichen's way of speaking was very logical and well-mannered, which made it hard for people to dislike him. Not planning to cause any trouble for Yichen, Su Jing said lightly, You can leave now. Don't come here again. Yes. Leaving the place, Yichen let out a breath. Although Su Jing's attitude was calm, she gave off an intimidating vibe. He was willing to bet that even if he ran into a core disciple who was ranked higher than her, he would not feel so pressured. It seemed like the core disciple ranking was going to change this year. Suddenly Yichen smiled. If it was before, he probably would not be able to say a word in front of Su Jing. But now he was able to answer calmly. It must be because of his strong soul. But what caught Yichen's attention the most was Su Jing's personality. She was indeed cold and unsociable. Normal people would not be able to get close to her. Plus her powerful martial arts, she left a deep impression on people. Arriving at the pavilion of martial arts, the pavilion master looked up and recognized Yichen immediately. He said meaningfully, How is it? You haven't mastered the lone peak of 13 swords yet, right? It's still not too late to choose another sword art. Yichen smiled lightly, No need. I am here to return the manual. Okay, please register here. After signing his name, Yichen turned around and was about to leave. Seeing this, the pavilion master asked curiously, There are only 2 months left before the Murang Gang? Aren't you going to try harder? The Murang Gang was a traditional trial in the Sky Cloud Martial School. It was open once every half a year. Most of the participants were outer disciples. If one could pass the trial, it meant that one's fighting ability was high. If not, then one would have to keep trying. Half a year ago, Yichen was beaten to the point of vomiting blood in 3 breaths and became a laughing stock. I think the lone peak of 13 swords should be enough for the trial. Yichen thought that he would be able to increase his qi to the late mortal realm stage 6 in 2 months. Even if he could not make it into the top 10, he would not be too far behind. Of course, he had not experienced the trial yet, so he was not sure how strong he was. The pavilion master nodded subconsciously. Then he was shocked. You mean you have mastered the lone peak of 13 swords? How is that possible? More or less. If the pavilion master knew that he had not only mastered the lone peak of 13 swords, but also understood the artistic conception and a deeper level of chi cultivation, what would he think? Not wanting to reveal too much, Yi-chan walked out. Even after Yi-chan had left, the pavilion master still could not believe it. He knew that the lone peak of 13 swords was incomplete. This sword art was created by the third headmaster of the Sky Cloud Martial School, and was a top-rank mortal realm. But for some unknown reason, the original copy had been lost, and all that was left was an incomplete copy. Even so, the lone peak of 13 swords was still very hard to learn. After all, the foundation of the lone peak of 13 swords was already at the top-rank mortal realm. The outer disciples nowadays are too full of themselves. The pavilion master shook his head, obviously not believing what Yi-chan had said. Chapter 4. Back in the yard, Yi-chan was stimulated by Su Jing's powerful fist art, and immediately wanted to learn the King Kong fist. However, after practicing a few times, he still felt that something was wrong. If I'm not wrong, senior sister Su Jing is training the top-rank mortal realm martial skill Monster Killer Fist, which is extremely powerful. Although my King Kong fist is not as powerful as the Monster Killer Fist, it is the same kind of powerful fist art. It's just that when I watch her fight, it's really powerful, but I don't have that kind of feeling. What is going on? Standing in the middle of the yard, Yi-chan frowned and thought. In his mind, he kept replaying the scene of Su Jing practicing over and over again. That's right, Su Jing's shout could travel a mile, and it was full of energy. That was because her body was strong. My comprehension was strong, but my body was still weak. In the end, I couldn't learn fierce fist techniques. Thinking about the key to the problem, Yi-chan let out a sigh of relief. He was not afraid of not being able to learn, but he was afraid of not being able to find the source. Now, the first thing Yi-chan needed to do was to get into the horse stance. Only when the horse stance was stable would he be able to use the powerful fist art. Otherwise, if he fought with someone, his lower body would be unstable, and that would be a big joke. The horse stance was to spread the feet slightly wider than the shoulders, in a half-squat posture. Because the posture was like riding a horse and it was as stable as a stake, it got the name. Squatting well in the horse stance could strengthen the kidneys and waist, strengthen the tendons, replenish the chi, regulate the spirit, and stabilize the lower body, improve the balance, and increase the body's reaction speed. The horse stance was one of the basic skills before practicing martial arts. As the saying goes, if you don't practice the fist art, it'll all be in vain. It meant that if you only learned the moves from the fist art manuals, and did not actually train the whole body's strength and endurance, it would only be for show. With his thighs and calves at an angle of 90 degrees, Yi-chan looked straight ahead, and as his breathing rose and fell, he quickly and rhythmically performed the horse stance. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. His fists were like cannonballs and the sound of the wind was endless. Within a short while, he had already punched more than 300 times. About a quarter of an hour later, Yi-chan concentrated on his lower abdomen for a quarter of an hour according to his memory. Then he would do it again at night. However, the speed of his punches had to be gradually increased. He had to strive for a breakthrough every time without stopping. Half a month later, Yi-chan stopped practicing the horse stance straight punch and only practiced the 4-level horse stance. He stood there quietly for half an hour. When he realized that there was no difficulty at all, Yi-chan clenched his hands into fists and bent his elbows in the double peaks piercing ear stance, which meant that the center of his fist was facing forward, the eye of his fist was facing his ear, and he pulled back as hard as he could. At the same time, he stood in the 4-level horse riding stance, bent his waist and puffed out his chest. Once the 2 hours were up, he intended to guard his lower abdomen for a quarter of an hour. By the end of the month, Yi-chan's body had undergone a huge change. His strength was almost 1,000 pounds, and he could walk as if he was flying. His chi could travel along his back, and he was full of energy. The most obvious change was the increase in his appetite. For every meal, he could eat 3 big bowls of rice and a roasted chicken. He slept very soundly, and towards the end, His chi was full, and he could walk at will, as if he had endless energy. However, these were not the key points. Now Yi Chen could truly achieve the state of heart and hand, hand and heart, hand and heart. He could maintain his peak condition when fighting with others. One day, after Yi Chen finished the horse stance, he frowned and said, "My body's quality has improved, but my physical strength is still not enough. Senior sister Su Jing's strength is at least several times that of mine. When she uses the demon vanquishing fist, it is even more indestructible and powerful." Looking around the yard, Yi Chen's eyes lit up, and he stared at a big stone in the corner. Lifting weights could undoubtedly increase one's arm strength, but it could easily damage one's muscles, so it was not a wise choice. However, running with a stone in hand was different. With the change of center of gravity and the shift of pressure, it could easily train every bone and muscle in the body, and it could also train one's endurance. As soon as he thought about it, Yi Chen ran to the corner, exerted strength in his arms, and easily lifted the big stone. He turned around and ran out of the yard. The windy mountain had dozens of side peaks, covering an area of dozens of miles. Except for the area above the mountainside, which was filled with buildings, the rest of the area was desolate and uninhabited. Of course, at the foot of the mountain, there were many disciples of the Sky Cloud Martial School guarding the mountain, and no outsiders were allowed to enter. On the mountain road, there was a figure carrying a stone as if he was flying. Those who paid attention could see that there was no chi fluctuation in his body, which meant that he was not using chi at all, and was purely relying on his physical strength to train. "Look, isn't that Yi Chen? Yeah. What the hell is wrong with this kid? Why doesn't he focus on training his martial skills?" There were 3,000 outer disciples and 500 inner disciples in the Sky Cloud Martial School. Most of them did not want to stay in their own yards, and like Yi Chen, they liked to train in remote places. There were also some who would find like-minded people to train with, and they could even spar with each other. Yi Chen did not look around, and did not pay attention to these people's discussions. But some troubles could not be avoided. A human figure shot out horizontally, blocking in front of Yi Chen. It was a 14 or 15-year-old bulky teenager. Yi Chen stopped. "Wang Gang, what can I do for you?" The bulky teenager's name was Wang Gang. He was also an outer disciple like Yi Chen, but his cultivation was much higher than Yi Chen's. He had already reached the early mortal realm stage 7. He was good at martial arts and had great strength. The two had a conflict before, and more specifically, Yi Chen had been beaten up by him, and had been bedridden for half a month. Wang Gang smirked. "Training like this won't work. Just like last time, I could beat you like a dead dog with only 30% of my power." Yi Chen sneered. He would have been fine if Wang Gang had not come to him, but now that he had come to him, he would not let it go. Half a year ago he had accidentally talked back to Wang Gang, and he had been punched, breaking 2 of his ribs. Fortunately, the Yi family was not short of money, and they had a lot of healing medicines, which was why he was able to recover in half a month. "Really? Then how do you think I should train?" Yi Chen threw down the stone. "All talk and no action, let me teach you." Wang Gang's body suddenly rushed forward, appearing in front of Yi Chen in just a few steps. His palm, which was much bigger than a normal person's, chopped down like a steel plate, creating a loud sound. Looking at Wang Gang's powerful palm, Yi Chen did not try to dodge. Instead, he raised his left hand and used the King Kong Tower style to block. He had chosen to meet force with force. Boom! The sound of wood and stone hitting each other was heard. Yi Chen did not move an inch, but Wang Gang's lower body was a bit shaken, leaving him wide open. How is this possible? His chi is obviously not as good as mine. How could he block my breaking monument palm? What the hell? Wang Gang immediately felt that something was wrong. He did not care about his own weakness. He changed his right fist into a palm and chopped out. However, Yi Chen had the foresight. Before his opponent could launch the second attack, his right fist had already landed on Wang Gang's chest with an aggressive aura. King Kong Fist, fifth movement. King Kong Smash. With a cracking sound, Wang Gang spat out a mouthful of blood. Both of his feet left the ground and flew backwards. He rolled a few times on the ground before stopping. His whole body was dispirited. This time everyone was shocked. Wang Gang, who had always been known for his ferocity, had actually lost to Yi Chen in a direct confrontation, and in such a miserable way it was like a dead dog. Only Yi Chen knew what had happened. Wang Gang's strength and qi were both higher than his, but in a real battle, Wang Gang's weakness of not being proficient in martial arts was immediately exposed. For example, that vertical chop just now, it was indeed powerful, but Yi Chen did not take it head-on. Instead, he chose to press down, first consuming part of Wang Gang's strength, and then he used all his strength to rebound, making Wang Gang's lower body unstable. As for taking it head-on, that was just an illusion because he was too fast, it could not be taken seriously. Chapter 5. Looks like your training method is wrong. I'm sorry, I won't keep you company. Lifting the stone, Yi Chen continued to run. After Yi Chen left, the crowd's voices grew louder. I can't believe it. Yi Chen won. He used the King Kong fist. The King Kong fist and the breaking stone palm are both mid-rank mortal realm martial skills. They should be equally powerful. Plus, Wang Gang's cultivation is higher than Yi Chen's. What is going on? The reason is simple. The calm-looking teenager thought for a while and said, Yi Chen's King Kong fist has already reached a very high level. There is softness in the hardness. Someone asked, how did you know? The calm teenager smiled lightly. The headmaster once said, softness in the hardness is the way to go. The punch that Yi Chen used to stop Wang Gang seemed to be very powerful, but it actually contained a rebound technique. Of course, I only realized it after careful analysis. The mountain road was rough and bumpy. Drenched in sweat, Yi Chen ran around the mountain for dozens of miles before he reached a wide river. Boom! Throwing the stone on the ground, Yi Chen took off his outer clothes and jumped into the river. Training at the bottom of the river was 10 times more difficult than training on land. The huge water pressure was pressing on from all directions, making people feel scared. Concentrating his qi in his dantian, Yi Chen stood steadily on the river bottom that was full of stones and mud. He casually swung his fist, and the undercurrent surged, but his strength was only 30% of his normal strength. But this was exactly what Yi Chen wanted. Otherwise, there would be no need to train at the bottom of the river. The river water quickly became turbid, rolling and swirling as if a huge water monster was hiding in the depths, stirring up trouble and wanting to come out. In this harsh environment, Yi Chen could feel that all of his bones and muscles were trying their best to fight against the muddy current. Gradually, they combined into one, increasing the efficiency. After a long time, Yi Chen could no longer hold his breath, and finally jumped out of the water. Huff, huff, huff. Yi Chen breathed heavily and laughed. Training at the bottom of the river is so efficient. I wonder how many people know about this method? Cool Breeze Town was less than 10 miles away from Cool Breeze Mountain. Second floor of Lucky Fortune Restaurant. Yi Chen, whose stomach was already rumbling with hunger, couldn't care less about his image. He devoured the table full of fine wine and delicacies like a tornado. It turned out that Yi Chen would come to the windy town to have a meal every few days. After all, he was just an outer disciple of the Sky Cloud Martial School, so the food he ate was cooked in huge pots. Although it was not delicious, it was still nutritious. Although the windy town was not big, it still had some precious dishes. Moreover, Yi Chen also liked to listen to the rumors of the Jianghu people, so that he could be prepared to travel the Jianghu in the future. On the second floor, besides Yi Chen, there were also some people from the Jianghu. All of them were armed with swords and sabers, and they looked spirited. Have you heard? Quick Blade Wu Wanshan was defeated by a young bladesman. I also heard about it. That young bladesman seems to be called Lynch. He is the third disciple of the Northern Snow Manor. His saber moves are very sharp. He defeated Wu Wanshan within 10 moves. Are you kidding me? Wu Wanshan has already reached the early clasping Yuan realm. He is very powerful. How could he be defeated by him? Third brother, you are too ignorant. This news has been spread all over the world. How could it be fake? But that Lin Qi had beaten Wu Wanshan, who was at the early clasping Yuan realm, when he was only at the late condensing reality realm. He was indeed powerful. I wonder how he compares to the head disciple of the Sky Cloud Martial School. Yi Chen's expression changed. He recalled the stories of Wu Wanshan and Lynch. Wu Wanshan, who did not belong to any sect, was in his 30s, and was said to have created his own swift blade technique, which could divide a drop of water into 5 parts in a split second. He once single-handedly killed more than 40 brave and skillful mounted gangsters, and cut a single plank bridge in half from a distance of 10 feet. He was named one of the swift blade techniques. Lynch, the third disciple of the Northern Snow Manor. He started cultivating qi at the age of 9, reached the condensing reality realm at the age of 13, reached the mid-condensing reality realm at the age of 15, and reached the peak of the late condensing reality realm at the age of 17. He was almost as powerful as the head disciple of the North Snow Martial School. Both of them were unreachable to Yi-chan right now, but Yi-chan did not think that Lin Qi had the power to beat the head senior sister. He had heard from the teaching elder that the head senior sister's talent in martial skills was no less than some of the inner elders. No matter what kind of martial skill she practiced, she could master it to perfection. She was a rare genius in the Sky Cloud Martial School. I wonder how long it will take me to reach this level? Yi-chan did not doubt his potential. His only weakness was that he started late. Suddenly, a Jianghu man said, "Who do you think has the potential to compete with the top disciples of the other 4 martial institutions in the future?" Without a doubt, the head disciple of the Sky Cloud Martial School, Hidden Fragrance Sword, is at the same level as the North Snow Martial School. As for the others, I think Jingju, who is ranked 4th among the core disciples. He is ruthless and has a lot of fighting experience. Jingju is not bad, but I think Tao Xiaofeng, who is ranked 3rd among the core disciples, is very powerful. He always wins against stronger opponents. The person who brought up the topic chuckled. You are talking about the top 5 core disciples. If it was in the past, I would have thought so too. But this time it's different. I think highly of Su Jing, who is ranked 23rd among the core disciples. Why do you say so? The others looked curious. Yi-chan was also paying attention. He did not expect that someone would mention Sister Su Jing. 3 days ago I saw her once. At that time she was fighting with the iron-destroying hand. This person hadn't even finished speaking when everyone started to discuss spiritedly. Iron-destroying hand Li Tong. This person isn't an ordinary person. He's treacherous, cunning, and incomparably ruthless. He's been chased for half a year. Yet he's still safe and sound. It's said that his unique skill, iron-destroying hand, is passed down from the Rudra nation. It's truly able to destroy gold and break iron. Wrong. In a head-on fight, Su Jing had been suppressing Li Tong the whole time. Li Tong's arms were broken, and he vomited blood and died. What? Li Tong is at the peak of the late condensing reality realm, but he was being suppressed? What's so strange about that? If you saw the scene, you would know how powerful Su Jing's fist art was. Compared to her, Li Tong seemed to be very weak in terms of aura and fighting style. Yi-chan smiled lightly. He knew how powerful Su Jing was. Normally, there were 3 extremely high realms for powerful martial arts. The first realm was the combination of hardness and softness, the second realm was the combination of hardness and softness, and the highest realm was the combination of hardness and softness. Su Jing had already trained the demon-killing fist art to the second realm. Yi-chan himself had only trained the King Kong fist art for a short time, but he had also reached the second realm. He had only used 70 to 80% of his power when fighting against Wang Gang. Of course, these 3 realms were not that easy to reach. Those who were not talented could not even reach the first realm after spending years or even decades. For example, Wang Gang had not even mastered the breaking monument palm, not to mention the combination of hardness and softness. Chapter 6. In the blink of an eye, another half a month had passed, and there was only 1 week left until the Murengang Challenge. During this time, Yi-chan practiced the horse stance for 2 hours every morning and night, and spent the rest of his time training his physical strength and martial arts. Right now, he could already lift a 300-pound rock with one arm, and with both arms, he could easily lift a 1,000-pound rock above his head. Besides the improvement of his physical strength, Yi-chan found that he had enough physical strength, and his sword arts were much easier to perform. His speed and control had increased drastically, and he could easily split 7 to 8 falling leaves with a casual swing of his sword, pierce through a waist-thick tree, and leave a 4-inch deep mark on a huge rock. It's time to train my combat skills. Yi-chan felt that he had reached his limit, and there was no way he could improve even if he kept training. If he had the time, he might as well use it to increase his combat experience and improve his fighting skills. That way, he would be able to bring out his full potential. However, it was not that easy to train in a real battle. He was still an outer disciple, and he could not leave the mountain to wander around the world, so there was no need to talk about life and death battles. Although the inner disciples were only one level higher than him, if they were to fight in a real battle, even if you were at the same level as them, you would still lose within 2 or 3 attacks. This was the difference between fighting and not. Fortunately, it was not necessary to fight with humans to achieve the effect of a real battle. There were demonic beasts in this world, and they could train either actively or passively. When the demonic chi inside their body reached a certain level, they would mutate and evolve. For countless years, the ancient people had divided the demonic beasts into different levels. Rank 1 and 2 demonic beasts were equivalent to mortal realm warriors. Rank 3 and Rank 4 demonic beasts were equivalent to condensing reality realm warriors, and Rank 5 and Rank 6 demonic beasts were equivalent to clasping yuan realm warriors. Demonic beasts above Rank 6 were very rare, and could only be found deep in the mountains. Fighting with demonic beasts was not any worse than fighting with humans. On the contrary, demonic beasts were usually more aggressive than humans. If a ferocious beast that had killed countless animals and humans appeared in front of you, you would only be able to use half of its power with just one look. Therefore, Yi-chan decided to go to the Silent Hills to train. There were often low-ranked demonic beasts there. Wearing the great steel sword on his left waist, Yi-chan tidied up his clothes and walked out of the yard. On the way down the mountain, Yi-chan sighed in his heart as he watched the outer and inner disciples coming and going. No matter who it was, if they wanted to live a better life, they needed money. His Yi family had millions of assets, so he shouldn't be poor. Unfortunately, that was not the case. For example, the Yi family had a total of thousands of people. 600 to 700 of them were businessmen, helping the family to manage the business. The remaining 400 to 500 people focused on practicing martial arts and didn't make any money at all. However, if they wanted to protect their own assets, they had to have a strong martial force. This martial force also needed money to support it, and it would accumulate to an astonishing amount in a year. That was why even his father, the head of the Yi family, only had a few 100,000 taels of silver. As his son, his monthly allowance was 100 taels of silver. If there were other necessary expenses, he could claim them. What could he do with 100 taels of silver a month? The only thing he could do was eat well and dress well. There wasn't much of a difference in other areas. Using expensive medicine to train his body was not something he could enjoy. Only the core disciples of the family or the martial school could afford it. Going down the mountain, Yi-chan found the right direction and sped up his pace. In the afternoon, Yi-chan arrived at the outer area of the Silent Hills. Some rank 1 demonic beasts started to appear. This kind of dangerous place, normal mortal realm warriors wouldn't dare to enter. Even Yi-chan became more cautious. His hand was always on the hilt of his sword, ready to attack if there was any danger. Along the way, Yi-chan didn't meet any high-ranked demonic beasts. Occasionally, a top-ranked 2 demonic beast appeared, but it was only a red smelting bird, and it was badly injured. If it wasn't for the fact that he was flying in the sky, Yi-chan wouldn't mind fighting with it. After walking for a while and killing a few demonic beasts, Yi-chan suddenly stopped and injected his chi into his ears. There's the sound of fighting. The biggest difference between a warrior and a normal person was the use of chi. A normal person's 5 senses had a limit, but a warrior could use chi to enhance their 5 senses. Right now with his chi, Yi-chan could hear loud noises from a mile away, and he could also identify the source of the noises. Following the sound, Yi-chan quietly rushed over. In front of him was a dense forest, and he could vaguely see human figures moving about. Other than that, there was also a huge shadow in the roar of a beast. When he was 30 steps away from the battlefield, Yi-chan took a deep breath and jumped onto a big tree, where he could see everything clearly from above. In the middle of the forest, there was an open space with a radius of 50 feet. Right now it was occupied by 4 or 5 teenagers with weapons in their hands, attacking a huge demonic beast. The demonic beast was 10 feet long, shaped like a fierce tiger with shiny black fur, a long red tongue dripping with purple liquid, and a mouthful of sawtooth teeth. Its claws were 3 feet long, sharp and curved. It was a top-ranked 2 demonic beast, poisonous sawtooth beast. It was as powerful as a mortal realm stage 10 warrior. Its body carried a deadly poison that would cause the skin of the victim to ulcerate. The victim would need an antidote, otherwise, once the poison reached the heart, Even a condensing reality realm warrior would not be able to save them. After observing for a while, Yi-chan noticed the golden rings on their sleeves, and the name of an unranked martial school popped up in his mind. The Golden Light Martial School. A martial school close to the Sky Cloud Martial School. The leader of the school, Li Yu, was a mid-class Bingyuan realm martial artist, and was an expert in the golden rings. He used to be an outer disciple of the Sky Cloud Martial School, and later traveled to other countries besides the Windy Nation. When he came back, he founded the Golden Light Martial School, and now had 500 disciples. The 5 people attacking the poisonous sawtooth beast were not very powerful, but their teamwork was quite good. It seemed like they had been working together for a long time. A few sword lights landed on the poisonous sawtooth beast. The one who attacked was a young girl in a red dress. She was wielding a thin sword, and she seemed to be at the mortal realm stage 5. Beside her were 2 twin brothers who wielded blades. They were tall and muscular, and they would yell at the beast from time to suppress it, using their physical strength to stop it from moving forward. Although the 3 of them were working hard, they were not the main force but the other 2. One of them was a young man in a black dress. His weapon was the Azure Dragon halberd, which was 2 meters long and looked quite heavy. Every time the poisonous sawtooth beast was about to threaten the others, it would be pushed back by him, and he would take the opportunity to leave a bloody mark on his opponent's body. The one that caught Yi-chen's attention the most was the young man in blue. He was about 17 or 18 years old, and he had a flute on his waist. He was the most powerful one without a weapon. Every time he threw out a palm strike, it would bring up a sharp black wind, which pushed the poisonous sawtooth beast back. If Yi-chen's guess was right, the young man in blue was a mortal realm stage 9 warrior, and he was already able to mix his chi into the wind generated by his palm, and attack people from a distance. But of course, the power was much weaker than Zhan Qi. Otherwise the poisonous sawtooth beast would have been killed already. Beasts had always been powerful, but they would eventually run out of energy. Right now, the wounded poisonous sawtooth beast was exhausted. The poisonous smoke that it tried to breathe out was pushed away by the young man in blue's palm strike. It turned around and tried to run away. "Where do you think you're going?" The young man in blue's eyes were like lightning, and his palm strike landed on the back of the poisonous sawtooth beast. Roar! The poisonous sawtooth beast let out a cry, and its huge body flew out like a broken sack, its internal organs all shattered. Brother Liu is so powerful. The girl in red wiped her sweat as she put her sword back into its scabbard. She turned around and looked at the young man in blue with admiration. The young man in blue said gently, "What's so powerful about me? You guys will catch up in a few years." The young man in black with the Azure Dragon halberd said, "I am now at the peak of Mortal Realm Stage 7. I will be able to catch up to you in a few months." "That's true." The young man in blue did not seem to care. The girl in red curled her lips, as if she did not like the young man in black's arrogance. Chapter 7. The twins surrounded the beast's body and laughed. "We've struck it rich this time. There is a poison pellet inside this beast's body." "Poison pellet?" The blue-clothed man and the black-clothed man's expression changed. The younger twin nodded. "It is indeed a poison pellet. It looks like it has only been formed for a few months. It's only the size of a walnut." A rank 2 beast was worth less than 1,000 silvers. 5 people would only get 200 silvers. However, a pellet inside a beast's body was different. Even a freshly formed pellet could be sold for 1,000 silvers in the market. A walnut-sized pellet could be sold for 2,000 silvers. Poison pellets were a type of pellet. They could be used as medicine or for training poison arts. The girl in red wanted to touch the black pellet, but the blue-clothed man immediately stopped her. "Sister Yao, don't touch it. This pellet contains all the poison in the beast's body. Can even corrode iron. It's extremely dangerous." "That powerful?" The girl in red stuck out her tongue. The blue-clothed man took out a jade box and said, "It's not good to use a wooden or iron box. Only a jade box can keep the poison out." Then he channeled his chi into his left hand and grabbed the black pellet. He carefully put it into the jade box. On the other side, the twins were already collecting the materials from the beast's body. Finally, they put them all into a golden silk bag. After everything was done, The twin brother frowned. Brother Lu, it took us half a day to kill one beast. There were more than 3 of them in the cave. One of them was especially big. The girl in red suggested, how about we go back and ask for help? But what if someone else gets it first? The black-clothed man rolled his eyes. No way. The Silent Hills is at least 1,000 miles wide. The terrain is strange and complicated. There are not many people here. The blue-clothed man shook his head. Haven't you noticed? That poison heart plant is about to mature. What do you mean? The girl in red didn't understand. The black-clothed man was dazed and said, once the poison heart plant matures, those beasts will eat it. The blue-clothed man seemed to have made up his mind. He said in a low voice, we can deal with normal beasts, but the biggest one is not something we can deal with. So let's give up. Otherwise, the possibility of dying is very high. Hearing this, everyone fell silent. Just like what the blue-robed young man had said, a stalk of poison heartgrass was not worth it for them to risk their lives. How about including me? A clear voice sounded. Who is it? The black-clothed youth's eyes were filled with killing intent as he gripped the azure dragon halberd tightly. Yichun walked over step by step and said, don't be nervous, I just passed by here. The black-clothed youth sneered, just passed by? You heard everything we said. Don't be rash. The blue-clothed youth gave the black-clothed youth a look before taking a step forward and blocking the 3 of them behind him. He asked, who are you? I don't think we've met before. Yichun cupped his hands and said, I am an outer disciple of the Sky Cloud Martial School. Yichun, I heard the sound of fighting so I rushed over to take a look. I don't mean to offend you. I see. The young man in blue did not suspect anything. Poisonous sawtooth beasts were extremely ferocious, so it was normal for the sound of their battle to be heard. Not to mention the other party was a disciple of the Sky Cloud Martial School, so it was not a good idea to offend them. The black-clothed youth looked at Yichun carefully and said sarcastically, you are only at Mortal Realm Stage 6. What can you do to help us? Yichun glanced at the black-clothed youth and said to the blue-clothed youth, if I'm not wrong, the bigger one is as powerful as an early condensing reality realm warrior. It is indeed hard to deal with, but I have a way to make it lose some of its mobility. What way? The girl in red asked curiously. Yichun knew that he wouldn't be able to convince everyone if he didn't show some of his skills, so he pulled out his great steel sword. The people in front of him saw him pull out his sword and immediately held onto their weapons, in case he suddenly attacked. Walking in front of a huge tree, Yichun took a deep breath, then abruptly stabbed out with his sword. Swoosh! The tree, which needed 2 people to wrap their arms around, was pierced through like a piece of tofu without any resistance. The blue-clothed youth was shocked. He said in a low voice, condensing the sword light at one point, such a powerful sword skill. It was normal for a mortal realm warrior to release sword light, but to gather all the sword light at the tip of the sword was extremely difficult. Even with the blue-robed young man's cultivation, he could not do it. Now that he saw Yichun was able to do it, he couldn't help but admire him. He thought to himself, no wonder he is a Sky Cloud Martial School disciple. Yichun turned around and said, the poisonous sawtooth beast is very fast, and its defense is not low. But as long as one of its legs is broken, everything will be fine. The black-clothed youth was very competitive. He sneered, it's easy to say, but the poisonous sawtooth beast is not a tree that will just stand there and let you hit it. Yichun didn't argue. He swung his great steel sword a few times. Swoosh! The sword was back in its scabbard. Just as the black-clothed youth was about to mock Yichun again, the leaves above Yichun's body suddenly split into 2, then into 4. The cuts were perfectly straight. Suddenly everyone gasped. To be able to do this without using their eyes, even the outer elders of the Golden Light Martial School would not be able to do this. The blue-clothed youth took a deep breath. He smiled and said, I am Lu Tao, an inner disciple of the Golden Light Martial School. This is Wang Haichuan, these 2 are Yang Wen and Yang Wu, and this is Yao Qing, Sister Yao. Lu Tao pointed at the 4 of them and introduced them one by one. It was obvious that he recognized Yichun. Yichun cupped his hands and said, it's my honor to meet you all. Yao Qing giggled. Are all the disciples of the Sky Cloud Martial School this powerful? Wang Haichuan said in a low voice, how is that possible? There was a hill hidden in the forest. It was only 10 meters tall. but it was more than a mile wide. Brother Yi, we will see the cave in 100 steps. If I am not mistaken, there should be 2 poisonous sawtooth beasts guarding outside, and 1 big one inside. The few of them had practiced Qigong, so they walked silently like a group of ghosts. Yichen nodded and said in a low voice, Brother Lu, you should have a way to lure one out, right? Lu Tao smiled lightly. The poisonous sawtooth beasts like to eat poisonous plants. I have 5 mature poisonous scorpion plants here. Although they are not as good as the poisonous heart plant, they are still effective. Previously, they had used the poisonous scorpion plants to lure out one of the poisonous sawtooth beasts. Soon Yichan and the others saw the dark cave and the 2 poisonous sawtooth beasts 10 meters away from each other. They immediately held their breath. Under everyone's gaze, Lu Tao took out a long jade box from his pocket and opened it. Inside were 5 purple plants with 9 leaves and a slightly fishy smell. It was the poisonous scorpion plant. Holding the poisonous scorpion plant in his hand, Lu Tao explained, the smell of the poisonous scorpion plant spreads very quickly. Once one of the poisonous sawtooth beasts smells it, we have to move away immediately. Otherwise, it will be bad if the other poisonous sawtooth beasts surround us. After 3 breaths, the poisonous sawtooth beast that was close to them raised its head. It's here. Yao Qing looked excited. It was like a game. When the poisonous sawtooth beast took 10 steps, the group moved back 30 steps. When the poisonous sawtooth beast took 30 steps, the group moved back 100 steps. Chapter 8. Looking at the dead body of the beast on the ground, Lu Tao took a deep breath. Only one left, I hope everything goes well. Yichen said lightly, it will go well. In the battle just now, Yao Qing didn't do much, because Yichen's sword was way too fast. Right now she was full of hope. How did you train your sword art? Can you teach me? Lu Tao frowned. Sister Yao was being too reckless. He hurried to say, Sister Yao, don't mess around. How can you teach me sword art so easily? The rules of the true spirit continent were very strict. Even a master would not teach his disciple everything he knew. Not to mention that the 2 sides were not related at all. Unexpectedly, Yichan said, there is nothing to teach, but you can practice the basic sword art 100 times a day, and you will see the results in a month. Really? Yao Qing didn't believe him. Yichen smiled but didn't explain. The beast in the cave was shockingly huge. Its head alone was the size of a water tank. Its huge eyes were shining with a bloody red light. It looked very cruel. Let's go together. Lu Tao took the lead. He threw out 4 palm attacks towards the beast. What followed closely behind was a snow-white saber gleam, dense and fine sword gleam, and twisted saber gleam. The saw-toothed poisonous beast, which had already been pushed back by Lu Tao, howled as it retreated again and again. In its rage, it opened its mouth and spat out a ball of purple poisonous smoke. Lu Tao was shocked. He immediately gathered all the inner qi in his body, and a black arc of light appeared between his hands. All the purple poisonous smoke exploded the moment it came into contact with the arc of light. The shock forced him to retreat again and again, and his arms were numb. The others didn't dare to stay where they were, and they fled in panic. Right at that moment, Yichan moved. His body flew out. His great steel sword pierced through the beast's open mouth. He flicked it upwards, and the tip of the sword came out as if it was cutting through tofu. The beast struggled for a while. Then its head tilted to the side. It died. It's dead? When Lu Tao saw that Yichan didn't act according to the plan, he thought that he had forgotten. He didn't expect that Yichan would kill the poisonous sawtooth beast with a single strike. Shaking off the liquid on his sword, Yichan slowly sheathed his sword and said, the poisonous sawtooth beast's poisonous smoke will pause for a blink of an eye. Above its mouth there is a hole the size of a cup. That is its biggest weakness, and it goes straight to the brain. The younger twin brother, Yang Wu, said in admiration, amazing, you managed to find its fatal weakness after killing 2 poisonous sawtooth beasts. Yichan said, finding a weakness is something a swordsman must master. No matter what, the demonic sawtooth beast has been dealt with. Yao Qing laughed. The cave was not deep, only 7 or 8 feet. Lighting the match, Lu Tao gasped. It's not the poison heart grass, but the spider king grass. What? Spider king grass? Senior brother Lu, are you seeing things? Yang Wen exclaimed from behind. Lu Tao confirmed. The poison heartgrass is purple and looks like an orchid, while the spider king grass is black, and the top leaves look like poisonous spiders. There is no way I'm seeing things. Hearing this, even the usually calm Yi-chan couldn't help but breathe faster. Although the poison heartgrass was precious, it was only worth 2,000 or 3,000 silvers, and was very useful for those who practice poison arts. In comparison, the spider king grass could only be described as rare. Not only could it be used as medicine, but it could also be used in the practice of poison arts. What was even more precious was that there was an insidious martial art called 1,000 Poisonous Hands of 1,000 Spiders, which required the spider king grass in order to master. If those who practiced 1,000 Poisonous Hands of 1,000 Spider found out that they had the spider king grass in their hands, not to mention 10,000 silvers, they would not hesitate to pay even more. Of course, the possibility of them killing and robbing them was very high. Yao Qing suddenly said, "Senior brother Lu, it's too dark here, I can't see anything." "That's true, let's go out." Lu Tao carefully dug out the spider king grass and walked out of the cave. In the bright environment, the appearance of the spider king grass was clearly revealed to everyone for the first time. The grass was 7 inches tall and had 7 leaves. Its entire body was ink black, and one could faintly see a flowing light flickering on it. At the top of the spider king grass, there was a fruit that looked like a black spider lying there. At first glance, it was hard to tell whether it was alive or not, and it was extremely creepy. "This is the spider king grass, it looks so scary." Yang Wen and Yang Wu smacked their lips. Lu Tao recalled, "When I joined the Golden Light sect, I was lucky enough to see the head elder obtain a spider king grass. It looked exactly like this one. I didn't think I would get one today." Wang Haichuan stared at the spider king grass and licked his lips. One spider king grass can be sold for at least 10,000 silvers, 666 silvers. I can't even make that much in half a year. Hearing Wang Haichuan's words, Lu Tao remembered to split the money equally. He said to Yi-chan, "Brother Yi, you and I are from different sects, it's inconvenient to contact each other, and the spider king grass and spider king grass will take a while to sell. How about I give you the money directly?" Yi-chan wasn't interested in the spider king grass, so he agreed. "Alright, 2 normal poisonous sawtooth beasts are worth around 2,000 silvers. 1 elite poisonous sawtooth beast is worth 1,500 silvers, plus 10,000 silvers for the spider king grass. It's a total of 13,500 silvers. Divided equally between 6 people is 2,250 silvers, or 225 silvers of gold. Here is a 100 silvers and a 10 silvers note. I'll give it to you first. Junior brother Wang, junior brother Yang, and junior sister Yao, gather the money and give it to brother Yi." The few of them gathered the money, but they were still short of 50 silvers, so they could only use the materials from the poisonous sawtooth beasts as a substitute. Putting away the gold note and the materials, Yi Chen's ears twitched. He said in a low voice, "There's someone." Putting away the jade box with the spider king grass, Lu Tao shouted loudly, "I am Lu Tao, a disciple of the Golden Light Martial School. Please show yourself." "Haha, the Golden Light Martial School. Is it that small martial school?" The grass rustled, and a group of big men walked out of the forest. The leader of the group was ugly. His head had been cut in half, leaving only 2/3 of it, looking very scary. "Bullshit." Wang Haichuan was furious. The ugly man glared at Lu Tao, his eyes filled with murderous intent. Lu Tao knew that these people didn't come with good intentions. This group of people was most likely a group of outlaws. His face suddenly turned ugly. "What do you want?" "Haha. Recently I've been a bit short on money. If you are willing to give me some, that would be great." Lu Tao frowned. "We don't have much money on us, but we can give you the beast materials. They should be worth a few thousand silvers." He couldn't see through the opponent's chi level, but if he was not mistaken, they were at least at Mortal Realm Stage 10. If a fight broke out besides him, the rest of his disciples would be in danger. Even Yi-chan would be the same. The ugly man yelled, "Do you think we are beggars trying to fool us with a few thousand silvers? Now I'll give you a choice. Leave the spider king grass and leave immediately." "Oh right, that little girl can't leave, let me vent my anger." As soon as he said this, the big men started laughing. Yao Qing's face turned pale, she bit her lips. Lu Tao's face darkened. He suppressed his anger and said, "You must be joking." "Who is joking with you? I'll count to 10 if you don't behave. Don't blame me for being cruel." The ugly man reached out his hand and grabbed the blade on his back. Chapter 9. Wang Haichuan's face turned red. If you want to fight, then fight. The ugly man sneered. It's not that I'm looking down on you, but if we really fight, none of you will be able to escape. Of course we still have a chance. 1-2. Lu Tao stopped smiling and said coldly, Sir, do you really want to fight with us? 5-6-7. The ugly man did not answer. He just stared at them as if they were dead men. Yi Chan and Lu Tao looked at each other. The meaning in their eyes was clear. 9. Kill them. As soon as he finished speaking, the ugly man pulled out his sword, jumped into the air and started to attack. Most people thought that they would count to 10 before attacking, but in fact this was their tactic. They had used it many times and they could easily catch their opponents off guard. The ugly man's name was Ma Wu, and he was a Jianghu thug who had fled from another city. He used to work as a guard for a small family named Wang. Later, he coveted the beauty of the young lady of the Wang family, so he decided to go all out and humiliate her in the middle of the night. His ruthless methods made people's hair stand on end. Lu Tao, Wang Haichuan, and the others were all shocked, but only Yi Chan was prepared for it. It was not because he had a lot of experience in the martial world, but because of his powerful soul power, he was able to see through Ma Wu's subtle movements. Pushing his chi to the limit, Yi Chan tilted his body and swung his sword horizontally, using the 8th movement of the cloud-walking sword art, flowing clouds and water. Ma Wu was stunned. He thought that Yi Chan was prepared, but he did not expect that he would meet a trap, and in the end he was caught off guard. In a flash, Ma Wu tilted his sword and brushed past Yi Feng's great steel sword. Clang! Poochie! Sparks flew everywhere, and a sword mark appeared on Ma Wu's waist. Blood flowed out from the wound. It was a superficial wound. No one could believe their eyes. A Mortal Realm Stage 6 warrior had injured a Mortal Realm Stage 10 warrior with just one sword attack. What the hell? Little did he know that Yi Chan was also feeling sorry for Magwu. If Magwu's reaction had been a bit slower, he would have been able to inflict a serious injury on Magwu. If Magwu had been a bit weaker, the blade would not have been able to deflect Yi Chen's attack, and the wound would have been an inch deeper. This was the power of the flying cloud swordsmanship. I really can't underestimate a mortal stage 10 martial artist. Yi Chen's second attack came after the first one failed. It was the 9th form of the flying cloud sword technique, luminous shift. All of a sudden, the sword light that was as dark as water diffused out. It was as if the air was no longer air, but a deep and unfathomable pool of water in the middle of the night. Damn it! Why is this kid's sword art at such a high level? Ma Wu's scalp went numb, and a ruthless glint flashed in his eyes. His broadsword slashed towards the center of the sword light like a bolt of lightning, and he strived to destroy the opponent's sword momentum. Otherwise, the situation would not be good for him. Ma Wu's full-powered attack missed, and he was shocked. He kicked the ground with both of his feet and hurriedly stepped back. Yi Chan seemed to have expected this, and he dashed out like an arrow. The sword in his hand changed its direction, and with a beautiful arc, it was the dangerous lone peak of 13 swords. A fierce light flashed in Ma Wu's eyes. He slapped the sword with his left hand that was filled with chi, and yelled, "Damn little bastard, die!" Boom! A Mortal Realm Stage 10 martial artist was not that easy to kill. A strong chi flow exploded like a hurricane, and it easily blew away Yi Chen's body. However, Yi Chan seemed to have lost his weight. He lightly touched the ground, and his aura suddenly changed. Like a collapsing mountain, he once again dashed towards Ma Wu, and the beautiful sword light pierced through his body. Swoosh! The tip of the sword pierced through Ma Wu's neck, and came out from the back of his head. A warrior who was about to reach the condensing reality realm was killed by Yi Chan with only one sword attack, and it was as easy as drinking tea or eating a meal. It also made Yi Chan realize how powerful his own fighting power was, and most importantly, how powerful the lone peak of 13 swords was. Pulling out the sword and shaking off the blood, Yi Chan tried to get rid of all the distracting thoughts after killing someone. He looked around and found that the others had also started fighting. 7 or 8 ferocious-looking men were surrounding Lu Tao and the other 4, and the sound of their weapons clashing was like beans being fried. Get the hell out of here! Lu Tao had the highest cultivation, He threw out a series of attacks with both of his palms, and instantly pushed back a few people. However, one of them only took 3 steps back. His clothes were torn open, but his body was not injured at all. Lu Tao's pupils shrank. Endurance Kung Fu. That man had a square face and a wide mouth. He was 2 meters tall and his chest was like a small mountain. His chest was like an iron plate, and there was a faint dark blue color on it. It did not look like a human's body. I have trained the iron shirt martial art, plus I have been soaking in the medicinal wine every day. I have already trained my skin to be as hard as iron. As long as I do not lose my chi, I will be fine no matter how many times you attack me. Come on. You are looking for death. It was Wang Haichuan who spoke. He swung the azure dragon halberd in a circle, and pushed back a few people who were attacking him. Then he turned his body and stabbed towards his opponent. This time, the tall man did not dare to underestimate Wang Haichuan. He knew that no matter how hard he trained the iron shirt, he would not be able to train his body to be as hard as iron. He was not afraid of ordinary blunt weapons, but if he was stabbed by a sharp weapon, he would be finished. Not to mention that Wang Haichuan's attack was so powerful that it could even pierce through iron armor. Putting his hands together, the tall man suddenly grabbed the azure dragon halberd, not letting it move an inch. Seizing the opportunity, Lu Tao landed in front of his opponent, and lightly pressed his palm on the halberd. Puff! Like a hammer hitting leather, the tall man's mouth started to bleed, and a shallow palm print appeared on his chest. It was a patch of green and red. At this moment, 2 ferocious men took the opportunity to attack Lu Tao. Lu Tao cursed inwardly. Although he had wounded the tall man with his palm, his arms were numb from the recoil force, and he could not even breathe. Wang Haichuan was also powerless. The ferocious men who had been pushed back by him started to attack even more crazily, making him feel like he could not resist. On the other hand, Yao Qing and the twins could still hold on. After all, they were in a one-on-one situation. Seeing that Lu Tao was about to be killed, a beautiful and bright sword light suddenly shot out. It twisted twice in the air, and the 2 ferocious men's necks started to bleed, and they fell straight down. After the successful sword attack, Yi Chun did not stop. He stabbed the other ferocious man's heart with a gap-seeking move, helping Wang Haichuan reduce the pressure. Thank you. Lu Tao, who had narrowly escaped death, said gratefully with a pale face. Yi Chun nodded and said, let's kill them first. In fact, after killing Ma Wu, their fates had been sealed. It was only a matter of time. In a short while, except for the man who practiced iron shirt, the others were all dead or injured. On Yi Chen's side, except for himself and Lu Tao, the others were more or less injured. Where do you think you're going? Wang Haichuan noticed that the tall man was trying to escape, so he threw the 2-meter-long azure dragon halberd at him. Crack! The tall man, who had been through hundreds of battles, dodged the azure dragon halberd by a hair's breadth. However, the monk could not run away from the temple. Yi Chen's body followed the sword, and with one strike, he broke the man's iron shirt and pierced his heart. Chapter 10. After the crisis was over, Lu Tao and the others let out a sigh of relief, but at the same time they were shocked. Killing a mortal realm stage 10 ugly man and a strong man with copper skin and iron bones all by himself, this kind of fighting power was really scary. Even the first outer disciple of the Golden Light Realm could not do this, and even those newly promoted inner disciples might not be able to do it. Even if they could, they might not be able to escape unscathed, unlike Yi Chan, who hid his power well. Brother Yi, I Lu Tao have never admired anyone before, but today I admire you, Lu Tao said with a serious face. Yi Chen did not say anything, he just smiled lightly. The group of strong men had brought them more than 3,000 silvers, and after splitting it evenly, each of them got more than 500 silvers, which was quite an unexpected windfall. Everyone, goodbye. After getting enough silvers, Yi Chen did not want to work with them anymore. He was ready to go to the Silent Hills by himself to gain more experience. Lu Tao said, all right, we are about to go back, you be careful. When they were about to leave, Yao Qing could not help but say, Yi Chen, remember to come and play with us. Yi Chen nodded, maybe next time. Soon they were gone. Yi Chen thought to himself, not long after I came out, I have already gotten 2,700 silvers, which is enough to buy some expensive materials to train my body. As for the medicines that are good for training qi, forget about it, those things can easily cost more than 10,000 silvers, I can't even afford them. Aside from that, what really confused Yi-chan was why he did not feel much when it was his first time killing someone. Could it be because of his soul power? Shaking his head, Yi-chan really could not understand. The Silent Hills was 1,000 miles wide, and there were countless beasts. As far as Yi-chan knew, the outer 100 miles only had rank 1 and 2 beasts, and the chances of encountering rank 3 beasts were very low. Like that big poisonous sawtooth beast, it was actually not a rank 3 beast, it could only be counted as a quasi-rank 3 beast. Between 200 and 500 miles was the danger zone, where rank 3 to 5 beasts could appear at any time, and with his current strength, encountering them would only mean death. As for the area beyond 500 miles, it was the real forbidden zone. Decades ago, a powerful party sent their warriors to the deeper part of the zone to find some rare herbs, but unfortunately, they encountered a rank 7 beast, Ghost Face Bull. Out of more than 100 people, only one escaped, but he died after a few days. The reason was because his body was too strong and he went crazy. Since then, no one had dared to enter. Within 10 miles, Yi-chan had killed 3 demonic beasts. The third one was a rank 2 demonic beast, the Rampage Bull. Yi-chan had grabbed its horns and killed it with his fists. After collecting the demonic beast materials, Yi-chan decided not to go any deeper. Instead, he chose to explore the path horizontally. He did not want to run into any beasts above rank 3. Time flew by quickly. On the third day, Yi-chan carried a big leather bag on his back, heading back to the Windy Town. The Elixir Hall was the only medicine shop in the Windy Town. It was not that big and the shop was not that luxurious, but in terms of wealth it was definitely one of the best. After all, the richest people in this world were warriors, and most of their money was spent on medicines or pellets that could help them train. They did not even frown when it came to spending money. For them, money could be earned back, but increasing their cultivation was something that could only be found by luck. Stepping into the Elixir Hall, Yi-chan frowned. The shop was bustling with people. Most of them were warriors in tight clothes, and some were young masters from rich families. There were also 1 or 2 people that even Yi-chan could not see through. They were probably condensing reality realm warriors. Walking to the counter, Yi-chan put the big leather bag with the materials on it. Shopkeeper, demonic beast materials. The shopkeeper was an old man wearing a black robe with golden edges. He had a calm temperament. He walked over and opened the leather bag. While counting the materials, he said, "Poisonous sawtooth beast material is worth 520 silvers, bald-tail wolf material is 85 silvers, violent bull material is 380 silvers. That's 1,650 silvers in total." Yi-chan said, "Change them all to gold notes." The gold notes were the same as the silver notes that Yi-chan knew. They could be exchanged for gold at the bank, or they could be bought and sold directly. The minimum amount was 5 silvers, and the maximum was 10,000 silvers. The storage fee was 3% of the total amount, which meant that if you deposited 100 silvers, you could only take out 97 silvers. As for the bank that issued the gold and silver notes, there was no need to worry about it going bankrupt. There was a saying that even if the Windy Nation was destroyed, the Bank of God would still be standing strong. This was referring to the stability of the gold notes. After all, as a super large bank that spanned over 10 nations, it would be impossible for it to go bankrupt so easily. There were countless forces protecting it in the dark, and the country was one of them. After ordering the workers to keep the demonic beast materials, the shopkeeper opened the safe and took out a few shiny gold notes. He placed them on the counter neatly. "Here, a total of 165 silvers. You can count it." Yi-chan took a quick glance at the notes, then nodded and put them away. He then shifted his gaze to the shelves on the side. As a shopkeeper, he was good at reading people's expressions. The old man smiled and said, "Young warrior, what can I do for you?" Yi-chan said, "I need some body strengthening pellets or herbs. Can you tell me about them?" "No need for such trouble. I will give you a list of body strengthening medicines. The effects and prices are marked on it. It will be easy to understand." "All right." A moment later, the shopkeeper went to work, and Yi-chan took out a piece of paper filled with words. Tiger dragon bone refining pellet, refined with the blood essence of a blood-marked tiger and horned python. 5,000 silvers per pellet. Demon Ox Strength Pellet, refined with the blood essence of a berserk bull and primordial grass, 3,500 silvers per pellet. Flying Swallow Pellet, 2,000 silvers per pellet. After a long while, Yi-chan shook his head. Body strengthening pellets were just too expensive. They cost 2 to 3,000 silvers every time. He could only afford one Tiger Dragon Bone training pellet with all of his money, and the effect of the pellet was only for 3 days. It was not enough for long-term training. Thinking of this, Yi-chan was a little envious of those who were blessed by the heavens. They received top-notch training from a young age and ate pellets and elixirs as if they were jelly beans. In a few years, the amount of money they spent could probably fill up a house. It would be strange if they didn't improve quickly. Of course, external help was still external help. Perhaps they could become an ordinary expert, but it would be difficult to reach a certain height. Looking at the bottom of the list, Yi-chen's eyes lit up. Got it. Body strengthening paste refined with 3 sungrass, beef butter, ironwood juice, and 8 other ingredients. 100 silvers per bottle. That's it. Letting out a breath, Yi-chan raised his head and called over the shop assistant who was passing by. He said, "Give me 30 bottles of body strengthening paste." "All right, please wait a moment." 30 bottles of body strengthening paste filled an empty wooden box. After paying, Yi-chan carried it out of the elixir pavilion. Chapter 11. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. In the small yard, a shadow was steadily training. The strong and fierce fist power brought up a strong gust of wind that blew the dust on the ground into the air. Ha! After a set of punches, the silhouette suddenly exerted his strength and consecutively punched the waist-thick hard wooden pile twice. With a cracking sound, the wooden pile could not withstand the power of the punches and broke into 2. The upper half flew 7 to 8 meters away, and disintegrated into small wooden pieces in the air. Finally, the punches have become soft and hard. There was only 1 day left until the Murungang challenge, but Yi-chan did not have any thoughts of relaxing. He focused on training his King Kong fist. His powerful soul power allowed him to clearly feel every inch of his body's power. He could easily combine the power from every part of his body and create a deeper level of explosive power. This was also the reason why he was able to train his King Kong fist to the highest level. I think the creator of King Kong fist did not train it to the highest level. I have the advantage in this aspect, but the opponent's advantage in creating his own martial art has made me lose. Bitterly smiling at his own stupid thoughts, Yi-chan shook his head and walked to the stone table not far away. On the round stone table, there was a white porcelain bottle with a red wooden stopper. It was the body strengthening paste that cost 100 silver per bottle. Pop! Yi-chan opened the stopper and turned the bottle upside down. Soon the milky yellow liquid flowed into his palm, and a light fragrance filled the air. Taking off his clothes, Yi-chan dipped his hands in the paste and wiped his body. So satisfying! After a couple of breaths, Yi-chan could only feel the heat slowly seeping in from the surface of his skin into his muscles, blood, and bones. It felt like there were ants trying to drill into his body, which was a bit itchy and painful. Looking down, Yi-chan could only see the muscles on his muscular body, shining like the most ferocious cheetah. His streamlined body was full of explosive power. It was hard to imagine that this was the body of a 14-year-old teenager. Of course, compared to Su Jing's seemingly weak body, Yi-chen's was at least twice as strong. After training for a while, Yi-chan put on his clothes, picked up his great steel sword, and walked out of the yard towards the announcement square of the West District of the Sky Cloud Martial School. The announcement square was the place where the Sky Cloud Martial School would announce important things. The opening of the Mu-Ren Gang should have already been announced. After all, many of the new disciples were still in a confused state, and did not know what to pay attention to, just like Yi-chan. In fact, Yi-chan didn't have to go there on purpose. He already knew what he needed to know, and there wouldn't be any changes. However, the current him was different from the past. He couldn't live passively. He had to take the initiative and strive to be meticulous. Sometimes it was the details that determined success or failure. Moreover, the day before the Mu-Ren Gang challenge, there would definitely be a lot of people gathered at the announcement square. This was a good opportunity to observe the strength of others. Along the way, Yi-chan realized that in the 2 years he had been in the Sky Cloud Martial School, he did not have a single friend that he could play with. Thinking about it, he felt like a failure. With a bitter smile, Yi-chan was a bit envious of the outer disciples around him. Seeing them talking and laughing, it was so fun. They arrived at the plaza. Looking around, a square marble plaza that was hundreds of meters wide appeared in front of them. In front of the plaza there was a huge wall with a giant piece of paper on it, with the words Murun Gang Challenge Competition written in big black letters. Following the flow of people into the square, Yi-chen's ears were filled with all kinds of voices. Last year, the champion of the Murun Gang Challenge Competition was the top outer disciple, Wu Zongming. I wonder who it will be this year? I think it will be Wu Zongming again. Who knows how much his strength has improved in the past 6 months. You're right, but I think the top outer disciple genius Zhang Haoren will win. Zhang Haoren, the one who reached the Mortal Realm Stage 10 at the age of 13. Yeah, I heard that when he joined the Sky Cloud Martial School at the age of 12, he was already at the Mortal Realm Stage 7. It has only been a year, and he has jumped from the Mortal Realm Stage 7 to the Stage 10. His speed is unbelievable. One of them sneered, no matter how talented Zhang Haoren is, he has only just reached the Mortal Realm Stage 10. Don't forget, Wu Zongming was already at the Mortal Realm Stage 10 half a year ago, and now he is only half a step away from the Condensing Reality Realm. To put it nicely, it is half a step away, but to put it bluntly, it is a failure, otherwise he would have reached the Condensing Reality Realm already. The one who spoke had a square face and thin lips. How dare you insult Wu Zongming? The outer disciple who spoke for Fang Zongming said angrily. The square-faced disciple did not back down. I know you are Wu Zongming's friend, but I am not. I am just stating the facts. No matter where it is, it makes sense. What a good makes sense. Suddenly a cold voice came, followed by a sharp aura that came out of nowhere, like a whirlwind. Everyone looked over 10 steps away. A young man in blue with a long sword on his back was standing there, staring at the person who was mocking him. It was the top outer disciple Wu Zongming. Yi-chan stood on the side with great interest, thinking to himself, this is going to be interesting. The square-faced disciple who called Wu Zongming worthless seemed to be scared by the aura. He stuttered, What I said was not the truth. Wu Zongming sneered. Do you know what kind of people I hate the most? They are the cowards who talk behind people's backs. Now I will give you a chance to redeem yourself. If you can take one palm attack from me, I will let this matter go. Do you dare? One palm attack. The square-faced disciple's eyes flashed. He was at Mortal Realm Stage 8, 2 whole stages lower than Wu Zongming, but it should not be a problem for him to take one palm attack. At most he would be slightly injured, but if he did not take it, then he would really be a coward, and he would not be able to hold his head up high in front of everyone. Alright, one palm attack it is. What is there to be afraid of? After saying that, he slightly bent his body, his right arm hanging down, and his clothes fluttered even though there was no wind. Obviously, he was gathering his chi into his right arm. This is the starting movement of the little Yuxia palm. Someone saw through it and couldn't help but say. The square-faced disciple smiled proudly. The little Yuxia palm was a high-rank Mortal Realm martial skill. Normally, with his status, he would not be able to get this skill, but his uncle was an outer master of the Sky Cloud Martial School, so it would be easy for him to prepare a high-rank Mortal Realm martial skill for him. With the little Yuxia palm, he was confident that he could take one attack from Wu Zongming, and maybe not be at a disadvantage, then he would be famous. Wu Zongming's expression did not change. He said lightly, Are you ready? The square-faced disciple raised his eyes. Anytime. At this moment, everyone held their breath, staring at the two of them. One was the top outer disciple, and the other was a Mortal Realm Stage 8 outer disciple. Although they had only exchanged one attack, they should be able to see part of their power. Even if they could not see anything, it would be good to learn something new. Chapter 12. On the empty field, Wu Zongming walked slowly towards the square-faced disciple. 10 steps, 9 steps, 8 steps, 5 steps. Surprisingly, the first to attack was not Wu Zongming, but the square-faced disciple. His legs slightly bounced up and he took a step forward. His right arm drew a strange arc in the air and attacked Wu Zongming from below. Puff! The sound of the air shattering was heard. and a dark light flashed on the edge of the square-faced disciple's right hand. It was a sign that his chi was about to break through his body. "Go back," Wu Zongming growled, and his palm landed on the square-faced disciple's right hand. Boom! The square-faced disciple's feet left the ground, and he was knocked back to where he stood. He took a dozen steps back and almost fell. Cough! Spitting out a mouthful of blood, the square-faced disciple pointed at Wu Zongming. You. He only managed to say one word before he fainted. Suddenly the field was filled with noise. Although everyone knew that the square-faced disciple might not be able to take even one attack from Wu Zongming, they did not expect the gap to be this big. It also seemed that Wu Zongming did not use any martial skills, and only used normal movements. The number one outer disciple was indeed powerful. Yi Chen's opinion was different from everyone else's. To be honest, the gap between Mortal Realm Stage 8 and Mortal Realm Stage 10 was not that big. Not to mention that the square-faced disciple had used a high-rank Mortal Realm martial skill, Little Yuxia Palm, which was almost at the threshold of Mortal Realm Stage 10. Even if he could not beat Wu Zongming, he would not have fainted. The real reason was something else. If Yi Chen guessed it right, Wu Zongming's martial art was of a higher level than the square-faced disciples. Whether it was the quality or the quantity of qi, the two were not on the same level. Besides, Wu Zongming had obviously trained his martial art to a higher level, and his control of his qi was much better than the square-faced disciples. Thinking of this, Yi Chen could not help but smile bitterly. The world he lived in was called the True Spirit Continent. It was a vast continent and no one knew how big it was. No one knew how many people and beasts lived on this continent. The only thing that was certain was that this continent was dominated by martial schools and martial artists. Although countries were important, they were not as important. On this mainland, there were two things that were extremely important to a cultivator. One was martial skills and the other was cultivation techniques. Compared to martial skills, cultivation techniques were several times more important. The value of a low-rank Mortal Realm skill was definitely not lower than a mid-rank Mortal Realm skill, sometimes even higher. If martial skills allowed a person to display 2 or even 3 times their combat prowess, then cultivation techniques were a person's foundation. The stronger one's foundation was, the greater the innate advantage one would have. Normally, if a warrior's martial art was 1 rank higher, the total amount of his qi would increase by 30%. In other words, if 2 warriors were at the same level, and one of them was practicing a low-rank Mortal Realm martial art, and the other was practicing a mid-rank Mortal Realm martial art, the latter would have 30% more qi than the former. If the latter was practicing a high-rank Mortal Realm martial art, then it would be 70% more qi than the former, and a top-rank Mortal Realm martial art would have 10% more qi than the former. There was a huge gap between the two. In addition to the total amount of internal qi, the higher the level of the cultivation method, the greater the quality of the internal qi. For example, if the internal qi produced by practicing a low-level cultivation method was compared to a piece of wood, then the internal qi produced by practicing a high-level cultivation method was like a piece of stone, or even a piece of metal. How could wood compete with stone and metal? It was obvious that they were not on the same level. As the first outer disciple, Wu Zongming's skill was at least a mid-rank Mortal Realm, while Yi Chen's was a low-rank Mortal Realm. Even if Yi Chen was at the same level as him, Mortal Realm Stage 6, his qi would still be 30% more than Yi Chen's, not to mention that Yi Chen's cultivation was higher than his. Luckily, in terms of the quality of qi, Yi Chen was confident that he would not lose to Wu Zongming. A month ago, he had already trained his Cloud Qi spell to the peak level, which was 1 rank higher than what was described in the manual. It was roughly equivalent to the most common mid-rank Mortal Realm skill. Although Wu Zongming had defeated the square-faced disciple with 1 move, he did not look too proud. To him, the square-faced disciple was just a clown. Defeating him was not enough to make Wu Zongming happy, but teaching him a lesson was to let others know that even if he had failed in his breakthrough, he was still not someone that anyone could compete with. Clap, clap, clap. A handsome young man clapped his hands and walked over. That was amazing. No wonder you are the first outer disciple. Wu Zongming, you are qualified to be my opponent. Wu Zongming turned his head and squinted his eyes. Zhang Haoran. Zhang Haoran's body looked a bit young, but his temperament was quite mature. He smiled lightly and said, "You are training the high-rank Mortal Realm art, the Peiyuan art, I wonder which stage you have reached. Sorry, I just reached the peak of the 4th stage. No wonder Wu Zongming was able to knock out the square-faced disciple with just one palm attack. It turned out that he had been training the growing yuan art. As a high-rank mortal realm art, the growing yuan art might not be the best in other aspects, but there was one thing that stood out from the rest. The growing yuan art was extremely rich and powerful. It was even more powerful than other arts of the same rank. Besides, the growing yuan art was divided into 5 stages, and reaching the peak of the 4th stage was already quite impressive. Unexpectedly, Zhang Haoren smiled proudly. Compared to ordinary people, you are indeed a genius. But today you are no longer my opponent. Wu Zongming sneered. Arrogant people never have a good ending. Really? I am not afraid of hurting you, but I am training the high-rank mortal realm above the clouds art, but I have already reached the highest stage, the 5th stage. That is the difference between us. Hearing this, everyone in the square started to talk about it. This is ridiculous. Martial arts are the hardest to improve. Zhang Haoren has only learned the above the clouds art for 4 months, and he has already reached the 5th stage. How is this possible? That's right. High-rank mortal realm arts are usually divided into 5 stages. For an ordinary person to reach the 1st stage, it would take at least 3 to 4 days, 10 days for the 2nd stage, 1 month for the 3rd stage, 3 months for the 4th stage, and more than a year for the 5th stage. I remember there were some inner disciples who changed to a top-rank mortal realm art before, and they gave up on their previous high-rank mortal realm art. Looks like in terms of talent, Zhang Haoren is still the best. Different from the others who were shocked, Yichan thought it was reasonable. Geniuses were geniuses because they could not be judged with common sense. Otherwise, they would not be geniuses. As for Wu Zongming, he was not that bad either. He was only 1 step away from the 5th stage of the Peiyuan art. Maybe in another half a month, he would be able to reach the 5th stage. Wu Zongming was indeed surprised. He had obtained the high-rank mortal realm art half a year ago after winning 1st place in the Murun Gang. He thought that reaching the peak of the 4th stage in half a year would already be amazing. Normally, it would take about 5 months to reach the 4th stage from the 1st stage, and another 5 months to reach the peak of the 4th stage. He did not expect Zhang Haoren to be even more talented than him, reaching the highest stage of the 5th stage in just 4 months. Taking a deep breath, Wu Zongming said calmly, "Don't talk too much, power is not something you can compare with." Zhang Haoren grinned, "That's right. Therefore, I will be the champion of this Mu Ren Gang competition." After he finished talking, he turned around and walked away, leaving everyone staring at his back. Chapter 13. Watching Zhang Haoren leave, everyone was impressed and jealous at the same time. They were all human beings. How could he reach Mortal Realm Stage 10 and over the clouds art at the age of 13? Was there really such a huge difference between a genius and a normal human being? Yichan shook his head, turned around and walked towards the notice board. On the giant piece of paper, there were lines of fist-sized words written with a silver hook and an iron pen. Obviously, it was written by a master who was good at calligraphy. Looking at the paper, other than some things to look out for, there was also a list of rewards for successfully passing the Murun Gang. It was a chi-boosting pellet unique to the Sky Cloud Martial School, which could save 1 month of hard work. If it was used to break through to the condensing reality realm, the success rate would definitely increase. Of course, it was only possible to break through to the mortal realm, and not from the mortal realm to the condensing reality realm. Right now what I need the most is time. This chi-boosting pellet can save 1 month of hard work. It is very useful for me. Yichan smiled and continued reading. The top 10 winners of the Murun Gang will be able to choose a high-rank mortal realm martial skill. The top 6 will be able to choose 3 windy dew pellets. The top 3 will be able to choose a high-rank mortal realm martial skill, and the winner will be rewarded with a chi-boosting pellet. Yichan squinted his eyes. He did not really care about high-rank mortal realm martial skills. But the windy dew pellet was a magical pellet that could help with chi training. According to some people, after taking the pellet for 10 days, the warrior would feel refreshed and free of all distracting thoughts. Their training speed would also increase by leaps and bounds, and it would be much easier for them to learn martial arts. Even many inner disciples wanted to get their hands on it. It was worth more than 10,000 silvers. It could only be found by luck. The only downside was that it could not be used frequently. It was said that the effect would get worse and worse every time it was used until the end there would be no effect at all. As for the high-rank mortal realm martial skill, Yi-chan could feel that his training speed would increase by leaps and bounds, and the quantity and quality of his chi would reach new heights. In other words, with a high-rank mortal realm martial skill, Yi-chan's overall power could easily double. Looking at the prize for the first place, Yi-chan forced a smile. Without a doubt, the Yuan boosting pellet was the most valuable pellet. It could help a mortal realm warrior level up, and it could even help a warrior break through to the condensing reality realm. However, Yi-chan was not confident at all. Although Ma Wu was also a mortal realm stage 10 warrior, he was nowhere near as talented as Wu Zhongming and Zhang Haoren. Both of them were geniuses, their martial arts and martial skills were way better than the others, and their comprehension was also top-notch. It would be almost impossible to win against them, unless Yi-chan could break through from Mortal Realm Stage 6 to Mortal Realm Stage 8. Slowly letting out a breath, Yi-chan made up his mind. He wouldn't hope for the first or second place, but he had to get the third place. If he missed this opportunity, he wouldn't be able to forgive himself. The night was over, and the first rays of the morning sun shone from the east. In the courtyard, Yi-chan, who had just finished a set of fist techniques, was wiping the body refining paste. His body was as straight as a sword. After this Murengang, it will be the Yi family gathering in half a year. Whether or not I can amaze the world will depend on today's result. Yi-chan knew very well that the second son of his eldest uncle, Yi Tang, and the daughter of his fourth uncle, Yi Xian, were both rare geniuses of the Yi family. They had reached Mortal Realm Stage 5 at the age of 12, and now that 3 years had passed, they had probably reached the peak of Mortal Realm Stage 10, or even the Condensing Reality Realm. A Condensing Reality Realm warrior was not easy to defeat. Even if Yi-chan had amazing comprehension, he still could not ignore the gap between them. Before Yi-chan even left the house, half of the Sky Cloud Martial School was already in an uproar. The Murengang Challenge was an important day for most of the disciples. On that day, there would be some outer elders, inner disciples, and occasionally 1 or 2 inner elders would come to watch. As for the Murengang, it was located right in front of the plaza. It was usually closed, and no one would be able to see it from the outside. When Yi-chan arrived at the plaza, it was already filled with people. More than half of the 3,000 outer disciples had arrived, and they were all waiting on the plaza. There were also a lot of inner disciples and outer elders, all of them sitting on the high platform at the back of the plaza. Elder Lin, who do you think will be in the top 10 this time? The one who spoke was a teenager about 16 or 17 years old. He was very handsome and his skin was very white. The elder who was called Elder Lin laughed. Yun Tao, you are already one of the best among the inner disciples, and you are also interested in this. Yun Tao said, my talent is not that great, and people did not think highly of me when I was younger. So I understand how the outer disciples feel when they want to be in the top 10. That's true. Elder Lin nodded. From what I can see, most of the top 10 this time will be the same as the top 10 from last time, but with the addition of Zhang Haoren. Zhang Haoren? I have heard of him. I heard that he is the #1 genius among the outer disciples. Yesterday there was news that Zhang Haoren had already trained his high-rank mortal realm above clouds art to the highest stage, the 5th stage. This kind of talent is really rare. The 5th stage of the above clouds art. No wonder the elder thinks so highly of him. Yun Tao looked surprised. When he was still an outer disciple, he also trained the above clouds art, but even after he became an inner disciple, he still had not reached the highest stage. Elder Lin looked at Zhang Haoren and said happily, the more geniuses there are in the Sky Cloud Martial School, the more potential we have. If one day we can become a rank 8 institution from a rank 9 institution, I, as the head elder of the outer sect, will die with a smile on my face. Yun Tao was excited by Elder Lin's words. Don't worry, Elder Lin. Although I am not as talented as the head sister and the others, when that day comes, I am willing to work for the Sky Cloud Martial School and help it become a rank 8 institution. As long as you have the heart. It was time for the Muren alley to open. Crack, crack, crack. Under everyone's heated gaze, the huge wall in front of the square suddenly cracked open, revealing a deep alley. No one knew where it led to. At this moment, Elder Lin stood up and said loudly to the sea of people, everyone, today is the semi-annual Muren Alley Challenge competition. All outer disciples are qualified to participate. As for the reward for successfully breaking the Muren alley, you should have seen it on the notice board. I will not say much here. Now let's enter the first round. Only those who have the ability to defeat a wooden guardian can enter the Muren alley. Elder Lin's voice was not loud, but with the help of his Zhanqi, it spread out for miles, and everyone could hear him clearly. Damn, last time I almost beat a wooden guardian. I can definitely do it this time. Me too, but I heard that in addition to the wooden guardians, there are also wooden sword artists. This is a bit tricky. No matter what the crowd thought, the Muren Alley Challenge competition had officially begun. Kala kala kala. A row of 20 wooden guardians walked out. These wooden guardians were 2 meters tall, and their bodies were made out of a strange kind of wood. Their eyes were 2 thin crystals, emitting a cold light. Obviously, they were not ordinary creatures. Yichun was not surprised at all. It was said that wooden guardians were a special kind of puppet, invented 5,000 years ago by a rank 5 institution, the puppet school. Although they did not have any intelligence, they could sense the people around them and use them to attack. The Sky Cloud Martial School had obtained the method of making wooden guardians by chance. Unfortunately, these wooden guardians were not very powerful, only equivalent to a mortal realm warrior. Therefore, they were perfect for testing the outer disciples.